Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. Until I'm running out of breath, or tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I am your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And on Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. And through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. And this is episode number 118. And this week's guest is hip-hop artist Rapper Big Pooh. As a member of the now defunct hip-hop group Little Brother, Rapper Big Pooh has been able to venture out on his own, recording collaborative albums with the likes of Apollo Brown and Nottz, along with his most recent album, RPM, produced entirely by Focus. During our chat, we talked about how it's been being a solo artist and having the Little Brother legacy always around, and about working with Focus on the new album, and about his other role as an artist manager. There's a lot of lessons to be learned during this interview with Rapper Big Pooh. But before we get into that interview, I definitely want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foul Mouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And I also want to remind you how you can support the podcast. You can always go to freshithepodcast.com and share any links that you see on the website for any of the episodes on any of your social media platforms. And also, you can subscribe to Fresh is the Word pretty much anywhere that podcasts are streamed. And that includes Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher Radio, Mixcloud, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Podbean, and Radio Public. Just type in Fresh is the Word and it should come up pretty much anywhere podcasts are streamed. And if you want to give a rating and review on any of those places, especially Apple Podcasts, that would help out the show immensely. And if you have anything you want to send me or any comments or questions, you can also email me at djkfresh@gmail.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at kfreshisthe.word and at Facebook at facebook.com/kfresh. And you can also follow Fresh is the Word on Twitter at freshisthe.word, and that's is with an IZ. And Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and at facebook.com/freshistthepodcast. All right, let's get into the interview with Rapper Big Pooh. Actually, a few days ago, you came up in discussion with my friend V Styles. You were on a couple of joints of his, Fantastic Four and Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, most definitely. That's my guy. That's my guy from Detroit.
Yeah, because I'm out here in Detroit too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. We were doing an interview for his new album, but we were talking about other things too, and he brought you up, and everybody else he's been working with in the past and everything.
I don't know. I think it was after I started my little sports blog I had for a little while.
Yeah, that's what he. Yeah,
Um,
that's what he brought up because I think he said that you had him involved with something on your sports blog, and originally I think Andreas Hale was supposed to do it, but then like you and then you had him do it or something.
yeah, because I know he's real heavy into the UFC and the boxing, and that's where I'm not that heavy into those two sports, and so I had him doing some writing for that, and I think he was like that's how he ended up meeting King Mo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I definitely remember that. I just can't recall how we met though.
Right.
Man.
Right. Yeah, I was just like, oh yeah, man. It was just funny when I was setting up this interview. I was like, oh yeah, man. V Styles was just talking about Pooh the other day, so I was like, that was cool. Yeah, you got this new album out right now that with Focus. It's called RPM. Rapper Pooh music, dude. It is. I was just listening to it, man. It was really dope, man. It sounds really great. Um, I see that. I see a quote where you said that before, like creatively beforehand, you weren't really in a great place. Sort of, what was your mindset going into this album, and why did you have to take some time, to sort of step back and sort of concentrate on some other things?
Well, after I did the Nottz album, Home Sweet Home in 2015, and the Apollo Brown EP, Words Paint Pictures in 2015, after that, I just really had to find that love and that inspiration again. After a while, when you're doing this, if you're not achieving some of the things that, some of the goals that you set out, that you set before yourself, then it almost becomes like a drain, and it starts to feel like a job. And I was just doing things to do things, going through the motions, and I didn't want to create that way. So I just really took a step back, and I knew I needed to get rejuvenated. And I just went into another phase in my career, which is managing. Around at the end of 2015, actually, I started managing an artist by the name of Loop. That's currently signed to Dreamville and Interscope Records.
Yeah.
And even before that, I was going to LA a lot, back and forth to LA. And I helped a guy get over there by the name of King Maz. And I helped facilitate him going over there to write for Dre. And he ended up working on what became Compton. And he worked extensively on it, and I was there for a few of those sessions. And it was just one of them things where I just, I started to kind of, feel it a little bit. And once I signed my first client as a manager, I decided to just really go knee deep into, being there for my artists and prioritizing and putting my artists first, and just really getting into the management thing full swing. And it probably wasn't until about a year and a half ago that me and Focus revisited the idea that came. Like 2014 is when the idea of this project was sprung, but it wasn't until like a year and a half ago that we really sat down and decided to get to it. And we just started working on it. It was happening in bits and pieces because we both had other things going on.
Right.
But we said we're going to do it, and we just stuck with it. Like, we'll work for about a month, and then we wouldn't work for about 3 months. Then we'll work for about 2 weeks. Then we wouldn't work for about 2 months. So it was just one of them type of processes.
Right.
But getting down to right before the album was released, we went probably about 2.5 to 3 months, like, of straight intense, really getting to it. And we finally got to it. But during that time, like, when we first really started, it was me coming out of that dark cloud that I had as far as creating was concerned. And as we went along, I started to really find that joy and that inspiration again. And so when I went into making this record is actually, it's me finding my why again. Like, why am I actually doing this? And actually creating to create. Like, I wasn't going through the motions. I wasn't, I didn't really have a lot of expectations. I just wanted to create something. And I just let my mind take over I'll let my heart take over and not my mind, and just created to create.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that maybe a lot of people in creative avenues go through. From your perspective, why do you think you got into that sort of dark place creatively?
Just allowing others' expectations to become my expectations. And that was part of it. And part of it was I came from a group setting. I came from a successful group, Little Brother, and, we achieved a lot of things. And as I went off into my own solo career, I wasn't matching some of them things. I wasn't coming close to some of them achievements, and that was bothering me. Like, that was the thing that I couldn't understand. And it took me a while to really get that, as we all went off to do our own thing, we all created our own fan bases in the process. So yeah, it's some Little Brother carryover, but everybody isn't going to, take that trip into solo world with you. So
right.
it took me some time to really, for that to become, realistic to me. And I think that bled over into me not seeing certain things happen or not, achieving certain things, and me being bothered by them throughout my solo career. And I just needed that time to really reassess.
A group like Little Brother is a group that people always want to reunite. Did that ever get in the way of your solo career? Does it ever bother you knowing that expectation will always be there?
It only really bothers me when I'm setting out to promote something that I'm doing, a new solo project, and instead of talking about that solo project or not talking about that solo project and just not saying anything, people would, they'll come and start doing the Little Brother talk. And I think that's the only time it really irritated me. I'm flattered that, that something that we did still resonates with people to this day, so many years later, even after inactivity. So, it's flattering, to think about it that way, but then it's a nuisance. Like I said, when you're trying to, move on creatively or promote a new project, and all people want to do is bring up, the group, and it's like, hey man, I'm talking and worried about this right now. I'm not worried about that. And I, like I said, I think that's the only time it really bothered me. But other than that, man, I grew to appreciate it. Like, it meant something to me. It meant I did something right.
Right. From a managerial standpoint, when you stepped away from, music to sort of oversee other artists, where did you sort of get the spark to want to do that?
It's something that I've kind of been hedging towards for a while. And, my manager and now business partner, he told me, I think it was like 2011, 2012, he told me that once I was ready to not have being an artist as my number one priority, that he thought I'd make a good manager, because he just saw how a lot of younger cats flock to me for mentorship or for advice. And then he saw how I advised or mentored these artists. So it's something he saw in me, and then I always took to doing some of the administrative things, even as far as Little Brother was concerned. I always wanted to know why certain things was done. I wanted to learn how to do certain things.
Right.
I wasn't just concerned with being an artist. Like, I wanted to know everything. So as time went on and I really started seeing like, man, like a lot of these young guys do come seek me out for whatever reason. And it just became one of them things where I was like, man, let me see what this is all about. And I actually enjoy that other side. Like I have the experience of being an artist and doing it at a pretty high level. And then I also understand the business aspect. So I'm able to bring both worlds, combine both worlds. And a lot of cats respect that because normally they end up getting a manager that hasn't been a creative. So it's certain aspects of being a creative that you only understand if you were or are a creative. And I think they definitely enjoy the artists that I manage. They actually, that's one of the benefits of working with me.
When you're taking this sort of mentor role with these artists, what sort of things are you talking about with them? What sort of lessons are you trying to teach them?
It varies on the artist. Delivering, that's a big lesson, is delivering. Being early is to be on time. Being on time is to be late. Like I was taught that in college, and I definitely teach that to artists or talk to artists about that. I talk to artists about being themselves, finding out who they want to be as an artist. The one thing I always say is that, you can go out and try to ride the fad train, and, it's a good chance that you still may fail. Like, I mean, the numbers aren't in your favor when you step into, being an artist anyway. But would you rather go out on your own terms or go out trying to follow a trend that probably ain't going to be around in the next 2-3 years? So just, things like that. And definitely, talk to them about the business side, because a lot of times cats get so caught up in the creative side that they ignore the business side. And, you even if you have somebody else like me to handle your business, that you still should be abreast of what's going on. You still should want to know what's going on and be able to understand when we're having the conversation. So, those are the general things that, I definitely, talk to young cats about. And then, like I said, it also varies on where they are in their career or what type of advice they're seeking specifically.
What are some things that you've been able to learn as an artist going through everything you went through with Little Brother on into your solo careers that you're able to, bring into these managerial roles?
Growth, maturity, perspective. You see things a certain way when you're just starting, and that has a lot to do with where you are as a person at that time. So just seeing some of the mistakes I made due to immaturity, or I can, as I'm older now, I can see, look back and can see, and so I think that's the major thing for me, is just the perspective and the growth, and that's probably the main thing for me.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about how you were able to help out these artists like Loot or King Mez with their placements to where they're at now. Talk about relationships you've been able to mold into in the music industry. How do you go about making these relationships with people to where you're able to help out these younger artists get into different places that they might not have been able to before?
It go back to something else I alluded to earlier, and that's delivering. So even as I formed these relationships with these different people, when I was coming up, I delivered when I said I was going to deliver, kept my word. Always made sure I project good energy, because that's very important. And I didn't want anything. It's a thing of you can tell sometimes when people come around and they're like vampires. They just want to take.
Right.
And And, you know, for me, it was a thing of, as I formed these relationships, I just made sure I nurtured the relationship. And, you know, I always did what I said I was going to do. And I didn't, you know, I didn't look for much back, if anything. And over time, people see that. And then, like I said, when you project good energy, when you come back around with something, that's the thing about this business. Like, I understand that if you have something that someone wants, you're going to be in demand. If you have nothing that someone wants, you're not going to be in demand. Like, I understand that part. So I just keep the relationship good. And then when I come and I have something that I think they need or want, then I'm able to really put somebody in position or put somebody in place. And that's the name of the game. It's like, you just got to know when to strike. Every opportunity isn't the time to strike. Like, you have to know when is the time to strike. And that's the big thing about relationships. You got to know, you know, I genuinely have good relationships with a lot of these people, just, you know, on a personal level. But then I know when it's time to pitch something and when it isn't. And a lot of people don't. Like, they're always, you know, as soon as they meet somebody, they're just hyper aggressive and, oh man, get me this, or I want to do this, or I want to. It's like, whoa, you know, I just met you yesterday.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things, man. And once again, that's just being able to learn that over time and learn how to really nurture those relationships. Like, that was definitely an important thing for me.
With the new album RPM, you work with Focus, and like you mentioned earlier, you had the projects with Nottz, and you had the project with another friend of mine, Apollo Brown, and then back in the day, Ninth Wonder handled the productions and Little Brother. What's it like, doing these projects where there's just one producer and you're just having this sort of one-on-one collaborative effort with these people, you know, from your perspective?
For me, it's a vibe, man. Like, you have to have a good vibe and get into a great rhythm with that producer. 'Cause the one thing that can happen, while it's easier from a sound perspective to work with one producer, the one thing that can happen very easily is for it to become monotone, for you not to have any dynamic within your project. And that can happen so easily because you're not worried about things matching anymore. It's like, I'm getting it from this one producer. I know for 99% sure that every beat he send me is going to work with every beat I already used. But you have to be careful of making sure that everything is in one note. So, like I say, working with these different producers, for me, it's been a vibe. It's been an energy that we've had or created. And once we got rolling, we got really rolling. And then it was up to me and that producer to really make sure that we curated what we were doing to make sure we had dynamic within the project. And I mean, I enjoy it, man. It's its own challenge. Everything, you know, people, obviously it's a little easier than trying to match multiple producers, but it's still a challenge. So I definitely enjoy working with the one producers. I enjoy being able to get into a rhythm or create a moment with these producers. And I mean, it's just something for me that I've done projects both ways, but this is definitely something that I really enjoy.
How do you combat that idea that working with one producer could lead to being monotone? What sort of level of honesty has to be there in the creative process to make it dynamic?
You got to be 100% honest, man. Like, you have to, I have to, as a writer and the MC, I have to be honest enough to tell a producer when I'm not feeling something. I have to be honest enough to tell a producer when I want to try something different or when, I'm uncomfortable with something or whatever. And then as a producer, you have to be honest with the MC or the writer and tell them when you don't think something is up to par. And then at the end of the day, you have to be able to step outside of your conventional box when you're creating. You have to be able to push yourself or be pushed, and that's something I definitely learned working with Focus on the RPM project, was allowing him to really produce and allowing him to push me places that I wouldn't have pushed myself to. You know what I'm saying? So, and he challenged me on things, and that's something I needed where I was, and that forced me to really be on my toes and not go through the motions in creating this project. And that's why the project came out the way it did. This is, I know a lot of people always say that about their latest work, but this is definitely some of my best work. It feels, even for me, it feels fresh. Like, it feels like I actually had to go back to the drawing board on this one, as opposed to time for me to make another album. Let me find some beats, write these raps. Like, it was a genuine excitement, because I knew I was being pushed and challenged to bring out my absolute best.
Yeah, let's extend on that a little bit. You kind of started on it already, but what was it about the sort of the method of operation of his work that with Focus that made you, get into this great place creatively again? What was just about working with him that was just so great?
First thing we did was, we had a few conversations about the sound. And that's something that I haven't had. Like, normally it's the producer starts sending me tracks, and then I'll kind of figure out where I want to go or what I want the sound palette to be. But Focus and I actually had like at least 2 or 3 conversations or more discussing what we wanted the project to sound like. He asked me what I wanted to sound like. He told me what he wanted to do, and, gave me some examples, and, we went back and forth and got that conversation out the way. And then as we started to record, in the beginning, he had a goal for me, and that was to keep me out of my natural pocket that I fall into as a rapper. And in doing that, it came with a set of challenges that I was issued. And in the challenge, so like one of the challenges was to write to an 85 BPM metronome, write and record to an 85 BPM metronome. Like, that's it. And now I'm not sitting in front of him doing this, so I easily, which I started to, but then I kept it honest because I'd be only cheating myself. But writing to an 85 BPM metronome is some of the most monotonous, uninspirational things you can do for somebody that draws inspiration from music. So as I'm listening to this thing just go click, 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 I just, I pulled up like a drum track at first, and I said, man, well, I'm gonna write to the drum track and then record it to the metronome. But I said, let me do this honest. Let me not cheat myself. So I just sat, and I had to really, like, it actually took me a couple days because I had to really dig deep and find something. And I finally got it, and I did it, and I sent it to him. And he was like, once he put it to a beat, he was like, yo, this is crazy. You go through about 2 or 3 different pockets. Like, you got ad-libs. I'm like, how did you do this, like, with no beat? And I was like, man, I took to the challenge, and I really took to the challenge. And so that song actually became the title track, RPM. And so, just that challenge. I had another challenge where he was like, yo, I want you to write backwards to the Beastie Boys Paul Revere beat. I want you to write a story backwards. So that was the challenge. That became the cycle. So just little things like that. And he's just issuing me different challenges, and it gets you out of your comfort zone. Like you have no choice. But if you take to the challenge honestly, it gets you out of your comfort zone. So those were just the little things. And after a while, we didn't have to do that anymore because I understood what the goal was. The goal was to keep me out of my natural pocket, so I could sound fresh and sound new and sound energized. And once I understood what the challenges were for in totality, after a few of them, I was able to move on and just approach songs with a different perspective.
How do you feel like those challenges, changed you, as a creative, as an MC? How do you feel like those challenges made you grow as an artist?
The big thing for me is it made me really take the time as I'm writing now to think about what I'm trying to say, think about how I'm trying to say it, think about the pattern, revisit to make sure I'm saying things the exact way saying them the exact way I want to say them. Like all those different things I didn't really think about before. I would just start writing, and I probably could finish a verse in, an hour, maybe two, depending on how inspired I am to write to the beat. But what those challenges did was it really made me take my time more than anything. I wasn't rushing through things anymore just to say, I can get this done quick. Like I started to actually take my time and go back over stuff. Can I say this better? Can I replace this word? Can I tighten this line up? Like it forced me to start doing that. And even as I move and do guest verses or whatever today, those are things that I go into those verses doing. Now they're becoming habit for me. And yes, it takes me a little bit more time, but the product comes out 100% better.
Those initial discussions that you were having with Focus on the project, and then just sort of the back and forth discussions throughout the project, how do you feel like that made the project better?
I think it made the project better because we were on the same page at the end of at the beginning and the end of the day. We started off on the same page and we ended on the same page. And I think that's why those conversations were so important in the beginning. Because as we started to actually make music, we were on the same page. Like we both understood what we were trying to accomplish. And, without those conversations, there might have been some friction or some pushback in the beginning from me, not understanding where Focus was trying to take me and him not understanding where I was trying to go myself. So those conversations were the foundation to what became RPM. And I'm glad that we had those, because without those, you might not have the project you have today, or you might not have a project, period.
In comparison to the previous producers you worked with, what's the difference between working with a Focus as opposed to working with Nottz or Apollo Brown or even Ninth Wonder?
For the most part, I got to the point in my career where I was pretty much able to produce myself. And, specifically for the Apollo project and the Nottz project, I was given a lot of leeway by both of those producers to pretty much do my thing. And then of course they come in with their suggestions and they did the mixing and all those things. But for the most part, I put the project together. Like I picked the beats I wanted to use. I went and completed the songs, I arranged them, sequenced them, all that. So I was just given that leeway. Whereas with Focus, he was very hands-on. So from day one, like he'll send me one or two beats at a time, or he wouldn't even send me a beat. It's like, find your favorite old school rap joint and do a joint over that and then send me the vocals. Like, so I wasn't hearing beats of some of these songs until they were coming together, like, because I wouldn't even record them to the beats that they became on the project.
Right.
So it was one of those things where he was very hands-on and very and definitely allowed me to have my input, because he trusts me as, to put a record together. But for the most part, I allowed him to do what he does best, and that's produce.
Was there anything from your managerial work that influenced the making of this album?
Nah, I went straight into creative world. I just allowed myself to fully immerse into being a creative and not think about anything other than trying to create the best product I can create. When I go deep into, for myself, when I go deep into that creative zone, I try not to blend music and business until I'm about done with the project. I try to just stay into that creative zone to get the best project that I could get out at the moment. Now at the time, I'm able to multitask, so I can help my artists, as they were doing what they were doing. But as it pertains to me as that project, I tried to stay in creative world as long as I could and not think about all of the business stuff that comes after being creative.
How do you sort of keep those two worlds apart?
It's tough, man. It's tough. But it's just a thing of, you got to really train your mind to do it, because it's a tough thing to do. And I mean, it's tough to even, be creative in 1 minute and then got to stop and go do something managerial. Like it's tough, because a lot of managerial stuff is conversations or, administrative paperwork type of thing. So it's a tough thing to do, but I tried to make it work the best I could. I know what my priorities are, obviously my artists that I have, but I'm also a creator. Like, that's even conversations I've had with both, the artists that I manage now, and that, just constantly have those conversations, let them know, like, I'm a creative. The only difference between me now and me, 5-10 years ago is I'm not concerned with being, big time #1 artist or any of that. Like, I put out music just because I'm inspired to create and put out music, and what happens with it is what happens with it. But my priority will always be my artists that I have. So, I definitely talk to them about that, show them that, which is more important than talking to them about it. And then when I'm able to have the moments where it's just me and being able to create, I can have the moments to create.
Yeah, I always like to ask this question to people that I interview. What is something that you've learned over your career, maybe some nugget of knowledge that anybody listening to this, no matter what avenue of artistry they're in, they can sort of project into their own life and have some actionable advice that they could learn from?
Man, probably, I mean, I touched on it earlier, man, but probably my #1 nugget of advice will always be to not be afraid to be who you are as a creative. Now, especially now, because of social media and streaming numbers, as it pertains to music, obviously, but we get so influenced easily to want to follow trends. If we see something selling, or we see people talking about a certain, thing or whatever, and we want that, and it's so easy for us to fall into that trap of following trends or following fads,
Right.
that we kind of lose ourselves in the process. And that's something that I learned early, and something that I preach religiously, is to definitely figure out who you want to be as a creative, as an artist of any medium, and do that. Be that. Like, be who you want to be. Don't be who you think you have to be. Be who you want to be. And no matter what level of success you achieve, you'll always be able to look yourself in the face and look yourself in the mirror, and be like, I did it my way. I did it the way I wanted to do it. Succeed. You technically don't fail as soon as you try, but your level of success just varies. And this ain't meant for everybody. Everybody isn't going to turn into, the next Drake or Jay-Z or J. Cole or, whoever. Like, everybody isn't meant for that. That's why they're exceptional. But as long as you go out swinging the way, being who you want to be as opposed to being who you think you should be, it'll be some success in there for you.
Great. What's next for you?
Oh, man. Back to managing. I have my artist Lou. He's working on finishing up 2 EPs for 2019. So we're trying to get those together and get those out. And then you have my artist Black Soul. He's a singer-songwriter from Tacoma, Washington. He co-wrote a song on Anderson .Paak's new album. So we trying to put together a few situations for him so he can, get an album out in 2019. And I have a producer, Praise, who just finished up. He released the All Praises Due with Torre a couple months ago. So that's, for me, man, just figuring out what's next for them and, shooting visuals, planning to shoot some visuals for the RPM project, still working that, slow cooker. It's not about first week sales over here. So just still spreading the word on RPM and getting as many people as possible to, go give it a chance and hopefully to share it with somebody if they enjoy what they hear. And that's what's next for me.
All right. Yeah, that's what's up, man. It's been great talking with you, man. Before we get out of here, where can people go online to get more information about you and the new project RPM with Focus?
Sure. You can follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram is Rapper Big Pooh, all spelled correctly, and Pooh with an H, please, not P-O-O, but P-O-O-H. Rapper Big Pooh on Instagram and Twitter, and then you can also follow me on Facebook. My Facebook fan page is Rapper Big Pooh and the number 1. I got some, exciting things coming. 2019, I'm bringing back my sports podcast, Pooh on Sports. So that's coming back in 2019. I started DJing for my artist as he went on tour. So just been working on that craft for the past year. So I got some mixes. We'll start putting out mixes every Wednesday. A mix called Whatever Wednesdays. So that's going to be coming next year. And yeah, man, just follow me on social media. I'm putting up information, tidbits about the album. You'll figure out if you're going, where I'm going to be performing or when videos dropping, or you can check out, other interviews or podcasts like this one via the page. So come check me out.
All right, great, man. It's been great talking with you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was my interview with Rapper Big Pooh. Links will be in the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com to where you can stream and purchase the new album RPM from Rapper Big Pooh and Focus, and where you can follow Rapper Big Pooh online on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, that's another show in the books. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.